too small to have like
It's a
to be in
Patreon.
Total Wine, but I had to buy it from their website, but I think it was only a little bit more money. But now it's in Total Wine, it's a little bit cheaper even.
We're talking about bourbon Patreon.
Just give a plug to Still Austin. If you want a good mid shelf bourbon, I think this is it.
It's Tequila Man.
Or be a Tequila Man with Scott.
Yeah, that's not what I was saying. I was saying if you want a good mid shelf bourbon, like
I don't.
Okay, well, then don't get it.
I don't.
Okay, that's fine.
Why are you fighting
so
right
mad?
Hey, we have talked a lot about something that's going to happen a year from now. So quite a long way away. And so we're not making any decisions anytime soon. But in this little early section of our Patreon content for our earliest patrons, thank you guys. We appreciate you. I want to ask what you guys think we should do for our 200th episode.
The patrons or us?
The patrons.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll be next year. It'll be the end of the season. It'll probably be something special at the end of the season because I think our regular
200th
season
episode
takes us to, that's what I said. Our regular season takes us through 199.
Uh-huh.
So our 200th episode is the end of next season, next year, a year from now. And we've kicked around some ideas. We want to do something fun. We want to do something that might include, and I think I would like for it to include you guys.
And pizza.
That's what I
and pizza.
I was gonna say, I don't know. Did we talk about this or did I make up that we talked about this? Maybe I shouldn't say this on Patreon, but who cares? There's only 3 of them. Like doing like
for now.
Yeah. Doing like a meetup. Like, hey, let's all watch this movie together.
Yeah, totally. Something like that.
If there's only 3 of them, that's pretty.
Here's what I think we should do is that we should persuade Carlos, even though I know he's got kids. So $5 a month.
He lives in Phoenix. So if you want to get him to come here, that's a 5-hour commitment.
So yeah, and he can't afford $5 a month. I know
there was
it's hard with kids, but get him to become a patron and then have them record our 200th episode.
Oh, 4 patrons.
That's pretty
so
good.
we're not even in.
And we spit it out.
That's pretty good.
I'll pitch that to Carlos.
But they all have in-ears and we're all trying to feed them lines to say.
Like,
so
it's like
Carlos is me,
Jokers.
Yeah.
And then Remy is Zach.
Yeah.
And
Okay, Remy, now
guys,
say you hate Scarface.
Uh-huh.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to restrain Carlos.
Jordan,
if that happened.
Who's 4th?
I'll feed into Jordan's ear.
Tynan is the 4th.
Oh, yeah, I'll take Tynan.
Take Tynan.
That'll
Our
be
first-
chaotic since you guys have no relationship.
Yeah. It'll be great. I think Tynan was our first, right?
Yeah, I was
He
like,
was.
All right, this is Tynan's you.
I know
you're Remy. I'm Jordan.
I know that Carlos is my friend, but I feel like Scott should talk to Carlos.
Yeah, Carlos is probably the one who would agree with most of my takes. I'll be Carlos.
You know who would have loved this? Rest in peace, Dan, who loved this very bit on Impractical Jokers.
I was just talking about how much Dan
We'll do
loves.
it in honor of Dan.
In honor of Dan,
We'll do Impractical
here's to
Jokers.
Dan.
His daughter asked if she
Alright.
could subscribe to us on Patreon, and Dan told her no
What? Why?
because of the bad words and stuff that we say.
That's fair.
We're too explicit.
We're too explicit.
Yeah,
Dan, if you wouldn't have said that, I would have said that's very based of Dan. To
No,
just be like, no.
I agree with Dan's take.
yeah. I get it.
frankly,
There's good words.
we get a
Although
little spicy.
Dan and Athena say all those words, so
Yeah, I was gonna say we're
Jake learned these bad words from Athena.
yeah, I was 17 when I met Dan and Athena 10 years ago, and I didn't know any swear words. I learned all the swears from Athena.
I love it. I mean, hey, I get it. You don't want to corrupt your own kids, but I love that they're just like, I'll corrupt this other kid, this
Yeah,
17-year-old kid.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
No, for sure.
Well, that's
what-
someone else's problem.
When I was in youth group and Dan and Athena were involved, they were definitely swearing at me. Like that's when that happened.
But that's because you were a little.
Yeah. That's it. Dan played Stratego with me, and then was like, you know what? You're a little beep and beep and beep, and I was like, Dan, what are those words?
Oh man. Well, what do you guys say we get into Blade Runner 2049?
Do it.
How's it feel killing your own kind? I don't retire my own kind because we don't run. I'm the older models too. And you new models are gonna be scraping the shit because you've never seen a miracle.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Rotten Potato Podcast, a podcast where four friends sit down and review movies that you absolutely should have already seen. My name is Zach. I'm here with three of my very good friends.
I'm Tyler.
I'm Teenan.
I'm Jake.
All right.
Zach, are you taking notes on your intro? Because I think it was good. It just wasn't breathy enough.
Yeah.
That was way breathier than I remember.
That was so
watching.
unfortunate because I even thought to myself, what would I have chosen? And that would have been the one. But it played a lot worse. Than
Yeah,
I
it did not.
It's because I think the place I recorded it from, the audio was not right.
Yeah.
Confirm
Because that
is
gunshot
the
was
case.
I
I can confirm that audio was not correct.
I noticed it when I did it, and I was like, I don't care.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was super distorted. You're welcome, everybody, courtesy of Scott.
Yeah, sorry
So-
about that. I'm embarrassed. For
Welcome
you
to
guys.
Chili's.
I'm sorry.
Zach, what movie, since there is no shot anyone could figure it out from that
Yeah, could
audio
understand any of that.
Nobody knows that that's me and Batista talking.
intro, what movie are we reviewing?
We are reviewing the sequel to Blade Runner. This is Blade Runner 2049.
Well, tell us a little bit about it, man. Like, why?
Well, I picked this movie.
Why?
I picked this movie because I freaking love this movie. And I have for a very long time wanted to do it for the podcast, but I never felt like we could just skip straight to it. And I didn't really want to have to pick Blade Runner. And so Jake fell on that sword for me. I'm very appreciative of that.
I'm a good friend.
In a year
You are.
where he's contending with Tyler for the belt.
I know. I will say, I also took a dive
With Disaster Artist,
by moving Disaster Artist. in.
Eternal Sunshine
Honorable
could have
move.
been a heavy hitter.
It could have been a heavy hitter.
I will
It
say
would've
about
been.
Eternal Sunshine that I have started and stopped because I didn't like Eternal Sunshine.
Oh,
That's
So-
true. Scott,
But you had me and
Jake,
Zach. I like Eternal Sunshine.
Oh, you've
Yeah, I
seen
like-
it.
Yeah, I've seen
yeah,
it.
he's seen it.
That's kind of surprising to me that you like that movie.
Yeah, I watched it probably 4
Pleasantly
years
surprising.
ago. 5 years
Okay.
ago.
Yeah. And
Six
I
years
think
ago.
this is it's Jake's title to lose. Since he's got Departed locked and loaded.
That's
I'm pretty
true.
excited about
It's
that.
yours to lose.
I was talking to my mom yesterday, and then she was like, "You should pick a Christmas movie since you guys are like going into
You
December."
should.
And I was like, "I can't.
You should.
I can't get rid of Departed."
You know, Departed
because
takes-
it's Departed against City Slickers,
Yeah.
and we all know how that's gonna.
I was like, "Yeah, you think I could put Christmas Vacation in there and still win? I can't."
Jake
Yeah,
has
it's
to win this one. All right.
It's funny because those seem like those would be opposites for you guys. That you would be Departed. He would
Yeah,
be City Slickers.
Never
that
seen
does
City
feel-
Slickers.
Oh, but I just love City Slickers so much. I do love Departed as well. Like I'm to be honest, I'm gonna be rating that one. I'm gonna be voting against myself. Like I'm gonna be rating that very high.
Well, I'm gonna rate City Slickers a 10, and
Scott, if you gave your first 10 to City Slickers, I would respect you so much.
City Slickers is gonna get a 10, and Departed is gonna get like a 2.
And you know, I gotta say, Departed takes place over a long period of time. Christmas happens within it, so I think you can make the case it is a Christmas movie.
That's fair.
Like
I
Die
won't be
Hard.
making that case, but I'm glad that you will.
yeah,
I think you should.
same as Die Hard.
What is your favorite Christmas movie, and why is it Die Hard?
Here's
I-
why it's my favorite, because no other Christmas movie kicks as much ass as Die Hard.
Amen.
Have I
Amen,
told you
brother.
guys about the Christmas countdown calendar I saw, which is what's his name falling out of Nakatomi
You have.
Plaza? I think that is a very good. And if we ever get like a set,
Like
I think we should definitely buy that for it.
Oh, for the RP set.
like an RP set. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that and like the rosary candle of the dude are the only things that I think so
oh,
far
that's a solid
that
one
I think we
too.
should put on it. But
Yeah. I'm into that. Well, I'm excited for Departed.
I
but
mean, we sort of have a set right now. It's just currently mostly cardboard boxes on
Yeah.
Scott's couch.
I say the set is Scott's office.
Hey, as soon as we get more patrons, we can start investing that money into making this into an actual studio.
yeah.
true. So subscribe, please.
Yeah.
So Scott will finally move the boxes.
Yeah, I need money to do that.
Scott's holding off. He can't afford to take the time to move the boxes.
You know what's
now.
funny is Carla was in here before you guys got here, and she was like, "Why are there so many boxes here? Like, it's disgusting."
So Carla's thinking more about our show than you are.
That's true.
I told her it's fine.
Yeah, just like when you heard that garbled nonsense at the beginning, I thought, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, let's talk about this movie. Scott, hit us with the facts.
All right. This was directed by Denis Villeneuve.
Nailed it.
Written by Hampton Fancher and Michael Green. Released October 6, 2017. Runtime of 163 minutes. Rotten Tomatoes gave it an 88%. IMDb gave it an 8. Box office of $259 million on a $185 million budget. So the same exact return as the original Blade Runner, 1.4.
That's interesting.
It did win for best cinematography, best visual effects, and then lost 3 other nominations of best product design, best sound editing, and best sound mixing.
That was a great callback to an old joke.
Yeah.
Scott, I think it's pronounced Dennis. Dennis Villeneuve.
I think
Is
it's
it?
No,
Dennis
it's not.
No, it's
Villeneuve.
not.
That's what I said the first time.
Dennis Villeneuve.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you did.
It's not.
No way, babe.
He's French, right? Like
Yes.
you don't.
No, he's Canadian.
French Canadian,
Yeah.
right? So you don't pronounce most of the letters. I think it would be de.
That's his whole name.
Yeah, de.
First and last.
Yeah. You drop most of the letters.
That was funny.
Thanks, Scott.
I liked it. I liked it as much as product design. I give it to him. All right. Give him the laugh.
No, it's okay. You don't have to. I want to earn it.
Zach, you freaking love this movie.
I do.
Tell us a little why.
I'll tell you why. Everything that so anyone who listened to the last episode will then know that I find the Blade Runner universe super interesting, intriguing. I think the set design of it, the overall aesthetic of it is really cool, really well done, really great. I think this universe is super interesting, super unique. I really want to learn more about it. I love this idea that there are replicants that Blade Runners have to track down and retire. And all of that I think is really cool. But the execution of the first one, I don't really love. And this one just is able to execute in a way the first one just really doesn't for me. And I can get into right now how it does or a little bit later. But there's just a lot about this movie that I think is done differently that I really enjoy, like script-wise. But also, this movie is it's gorgeous. It may be my favorite movie to just like look at, like just to put it on and just look at. I think Roger Deakins did an excellent job, and it's the first film that he actually ended up winning an Academy Award for. But I find the script just so much more compelling. And there's a lot about it that I really enjoy, and I'm excited to get into it. But yeah, I just really, really love it. I think it might be my favorite Denis film, which is saying a lot because I love all his movies.
Right.
He's great.
Well, I'd seen this movie before as well, and watching it again, honestly, the first time I watched it, I'm going to confess something to you guys.
Didn't like it.
No, I mean, I for sure didn't like it, but also I went into it this time. I was like, I think I didn't realize until like pretty close to the end of the movie that the first time I watched it in theaters that Ryan Gosling was playing a replicant.
I was gonna talk about.
It was in the opening scene.
I know.
That's what I was gonna talk
That's what
about.
I'm saying. Watching it this time, I was like, man, I have to admit something very foolish and like I have to follow my sword to you guys. The first time I watched this, I understood it so little that watching it through this time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is in the first sentence of dialogue.
I was gonna say, I think that is one of the better like working exposition into dialogue that I've seen in any movie, where it's just like he's like, how does it feel retiring your own kind?
Oh
And I'm
right,
like, oh, he's a replicant.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that,
right.
but it wasn't like, hey, he's a replicant.
Yeah, right.
And he's a robot. He's not a real person.
Right.
Like I think like they worked that in so naturally. And
No,
I thought
I
that
agree.
was excellent.
And
I agree. So much so that the first time I watched it in theaters, I didn't even notice it. So this time watching it through, I liked this movie significantly more, mostly because apparently like I understood what they were trying to do the second time, and I actually didn't even understand what they were trying to do the first time.
Well, and I'll be honest too, rewatching it this time, I remembered that Ryan Gosling, that his character is a replicant, but I forgot that was revealed so early in the movie. And so as we're watching it, I was thinking to myself like, oh man, like, does this movie try to make me guess if he's a replicant or not throughout the movie? If so, that's going to feel really derivative, and I might have an issue with that. I don't remember why that didn't bug me prior. And then we find out so quickly that, no, explicitly he is one. I think that's such a good idea, because I think that would have felt really derivative of the first one if the entire time you are trying to figure out, is Kay a replicant or not? And I'm glad that they just explicitly tell us with the first 10 minutes of the movie.
The first 10 seconds of the movie. I
don't think it's that quick necessarily, but it's very early on. Yeah,
it's super quick, and I think that made me like this movie watching it through this time way more than I watched it through the first time. I think the first time I watched it, I just really didn't get it, and I walked away from it like. Then I watched it through the first time. I think the first time I watched it, I just really didn't get it, and I walked away from it like. Man, that was bad. Like I just walked away from it from theaters. Like, man, I just hate Blade Runner, and I don't get Blade Runner at all. And watching it through this time, I liked it a lot more. I agree that this is just such a pretty movie. It's so pretty to look at. And I think that Denis has I think with this and then followed up not that long after by Dune, has cemented himself as the artist of making what we always wanted the first time, the second time. And I think that's an impressive, following up, Lynch and Scott with, Blade Runner and then Dune, inversely, not respectively. I mean, I think he freaking killed it. And so I really liked this movie a lot. There are some things that I still don't care for, but by and large, I liked it quite a bit. But Scott and Jake, you were both late bloomers to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jake, you are champing at the bit right now.
Am I?
A little bit. I mean, you've got mic in hand. You're you're rock fisting it. You're ready to go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll go,
man.
I watched this movie and I was confused because I was like, how did they? I didn't remember any cameras being there when I did this. Because I was like, that's me, up there, right? And then I talked to a friend. They're like, apparently it's a guy called Ryan Gosling, and they were doing a documentary about me.
Oh, got it.
And they didn't talk to me about it, so I was confused at how they got it so right.
They used it without your permission.
Right? Yeah. I was like, I can't believe that they knew that I was married to Hologram Ana de Armas.
Wow.
I couldn't believe I couldn't. Sorry.
You lost it.
It was when you signed your contract for this pod. We gave them the rights to your life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that applied retroactively because this movie came out before we started the pod, I think.
Well, we made you sign back when you were in high school.
Yeah, we in the future
Did my parents have to co-sign on that?
No.
I wasn't 18 when I graduated high school.
Matter.
Yeah, but in the future of this podcast, when we invent the time machine to go back in time to make you sign that, you're of age in the future, so it doesn't matter.
That makes
because
sense.
In the future where time travel exists, we've decided that the age of consent is whenever you are in real time, not in altered time.
That doesn't sound like science, but it does sound like fiction.
But seriously, I like this movie a fair amount. I liked it. It was I think you nailed it. Where it's this is what I wanted when I watched Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I love Ryan Gosling. I don't like old man Harrison Ford. I like young man Harrison Ford, which was something I forgot to say in the episode about Blade Runner. But I like this movie a lot. I think very pretty, and I think that it is what I wanted when I was watching the last movie, and it made me glad that I picked the last movie so that we could do this movie.
Well, and I wouldn't feel mad about talking at all about Blade Runner while we talk about this movie, mostly because anyone who's going to listen to one of these episodes is definitely listening to both of them.
I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody who likes Blade Runner that hates Blade Runner 2049. But I do know people that don't like Blade Runner that like Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
But everybody has seen both and will want to talk about both.
They'll want to listen to both.
Yeah.
Scott, you were also a late bloomer to 2049. What do you think, man?
I was immediately way better than Blade Runner.
Did you like a deep exhale sigh of relief? Like, oh, thank God. Like,
yeah. The only thing that I was like unsure about, I was like,
because you
okay,
saw
but
Dave
this-
Bautista and you're like, oh, Drax is in
Yeah.
this.
I literally said, I was like, Drax is in this?
I'll like this.
But
What happened to his tattoo?
I saw the 3-hour time frame on it, and I was like, oh, this better be better because this is going to be rough if this is the same. And I would say it was a little too long for me. I think it should have cut. I don't know what I would cut out, but there's definitely were things that they could have cut out to make it a little bit shorter. Ripping. And immediately, like, something that the first one didn't do was like, I was in it. I was like, okay, like, time to finally explore what this world is 30 years later. And so
it's up there for me with like Inglourious Bastards, and I'm sure if I spent more time thinking, I'm in terms of like great opening scenes.
Oh, gotcha.
okay.
Where I am instantly in, like you just said, Scott, and I think it kicks off the movie excellently.
Yeah, and I think they do really have a great cast, and they introduce some new fun things like the Ana de Armas character.
Yeah.
I also thought Robin Wright was really good. I think she's a really good actress.
Is Robin Wright
Madam?
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
And so, like, all around, I felt like the acting was way superior to Blade Runner. And there was just so many more like human emotions in this and more things to latch onto, to like connect with and like feel things. And so all in all, much more enjoyable experience. I do think it was a little bit too long. I think cinematographically, though, it was excellent. Lots of really cool, interesting shots, lots of great coloring choices, so many different scenes. There was like just dominant colors throughout every element of the scene. I would say the only like weak link in acting for me was Jared Leto. Wasn't a huge fan of him. It was kind of annoying to look at his face a little bit for me, like the way they did his eyes. And I just have a distaste for Jared Leto, so I'm like kind of writing that off. Like, okay, it's probably just my own bias on Jared Leto. And it's mostly because of Jake and how much Jake trashes him.
Oh, I appreciate that. I've done that. I have that influence.
You have.
You know,
I don't think I've influenced you in any other way.
I don't think I've ever influenced Scott in any way.
Yeah,
So
Scott's impossible to influence.
yeah,
I've
would
tried
take the
really
win.
hard, and it almost never happens.
I would take that win.
No,
Jake.
Well, it's because
I'm gonna come away. I'm gonna drive home thrilled. I might call my mom. I'm gonna call my girlfriend and talk about that.
it's because you said stuff and then I experienced him. I'm like, what Jake said was right. Like, that's stupid and annoying. And
you know
I
what's
don't
so
like him.
interesting too is like I don't like Jared Leto necessarily as a person. Like what I've read about him is wouldn't make me care for him.
It's off-putting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, off-putting. He is an off-putting person. As an actor, I really don't mind him. I mean,
have you seen Morbius?
No, clearly I've not seen.
Oh,
Morbius.
you haven't? I have.
Have you watched?
It was awful.
That's why I haven't seen it.
Have you watched the
gotta
Eddie
see it.
Burback video where Eddie Burback watches Morbius 4-5 times in 5 days?
I don't know who that is.
Uh.
But I mean, I haven't seen Morbius. Suicide Squad is terrible, obviously. But he's in Fight Club.
Yeah.
He's good. He was good in Panic Room. He's been in movies that I like, and he's great in Requiem.
I would say the
I don't
great
mind him as
thing
an
about
actor.
him in this movie is that there's so little of him.
I don't
And
mind him in
he's
this
not
movie.
even really like the bad guy in this movie. He's just like
No, yeah.
a side character to the bad guy of
Like,
what's her name, like Sally Harmson or something.
When you talk about him in Fight Club, honestly, if I think about Fight Club, I could think about and talk about that entire movie and never mention Jared Leto. Or think about Jared Leto.
I really like him in Fight Club.
I think he's
one of my favorite
key
parts.
to one of the most disturbing
Yeah, I
aspects
agree.
of that movie.
I think that could have been anybody though.
Sure. Well, but
Well,
you can
I don't
go
know.
down that rabbit trail of like with so many actors. You
All
know,
right,
like
that's fair.
there's a lot
That's
of good
fair.
actors out there.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Anyways, I thought this was interesting. Denis' first, or I guess preferred person to play Neander, which was Jared Leto's character, was David Bowie. But he died. He couldn't do it.
I could see that.
I could see that.
I feel like
too.
that would have been really interesting. I probably would have liked it more.
Yeah.
Can I tell you guys what Jared Leto described as Neander Wallace? Like the character, like what like drew him to take the role?
What?
He described Neander Wallace as Elon Musk if he wasn't such an underachiever.
Oh, wow. That's a solid diss, to be honest.
That's a great diss.
Does that kind of like endear you to Jared Leto a little bit? Because you hate Elon Musk.
I hate Elon Musk more than I hate Jared Leto.
Jake, am I allowed to like him more now, or where should
I think you are allowed to like him more. There's something I've been
Marginally
wanting
so.
to talk to you about, and maybe we talk about it after the episode with Patreon. But you said that you didn't think Elon Musk was an idiot, and I've thought about that every day since you said it. So I would love to hear why.
Well, let's talk about that off main pod.
I want to talk a little bit more about Jared Leto because he's clearly like the weirdest part of this movie, and this movie is pretty weird. But I feel like he kind of fits within the Blade Runner universe. He feels like he could have been in the first one.
Oh,
and I think it's because the first one, like, we have some really weird characters that don't feel human. They don't feel realistic at all to like how a normal person would react or act at all, really. And he just kind of feels like it just fits. And so I don't mind that performance.
I have a question about before we get into that. But his eyes, was that because his eyes were gone and he like the cameras were what he was seeing, or was he blind?
He's
and
blind.
He was seeing what
It's
like drones were seeing.
It's two things are going on. One is, yes, he is for sure blind. The character is blind. The character is blind, and those drones are cameras that he is viewing through. But the reason why they do his eyes that way is a little bit of an homage to the first Blade Runner, where replicants, like, they did a thing with catchlight in their eyes where their pupils look red a lot of times. And it's a way for us as the audience to kind of like see that there's something off about that person is the way that they use light in their eyes. And so it's a little bit like, it's for sure to like reinforce the fact that he is blind, but it's also a little bit of like an homage to.
Okay, but he is seeing through those drones.
He's seeing through those drones.
Okay. That was something I wanted to confirm.
He is blind, and Jared Leto acted the entire production of this film that he was in fact blind.
Love it.
Yep.
Classic Leto.
Yeah.
Did he also play?
Denis
like
described
he had
it.
Little things that he was
Denis
seeing
described it as a little weird, but it did great.
Denis is so polite.
Like, it was
a little weird.
A little weird.
But, you know,
it
he did a
was
great job.
awesome. You know, it was awesome.
Did
Yeah, I
Jared
think-
Leto pretend like he also had his little viewfinders, the little lights?
No, the drones,
Yeah,
little
that he
no,
could see
he
through.
didn't pretend that those existed, but he pretended that he was blind.
So it feels off to the actual character.
So he would close his eyes when like he was coming into the set. He had to be led into the set and into position because he was blind.
I would be so mad. If I was
And
the
then he
person.
would open his eyes for acting, but his pupils were covered by those contact lenses. And so like he could sort of see past the contacts, but not really, like, you know, but he committed to being blind completely the entire time.
Imagine being the guy that has to lead him around.
Oh, God.
He's got perfectly functioning eyes. And he's like, I'm just gonna close them. I'm gonna close them. You guide me around.
It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But I'll tell you what, no, I agree with you, Zach. Honestly, Jared Leto, as much as I feel exactly like all of us do about him as a person and as an actor, when he gets typecast, well, he shines.
He's effective.
He's very effective, and he was very effective in this role. And yeah, I could see Bowie doing it, but I would also guess that Bowie would just be David fucking Bowie. I'm sorry, I gotta
Flag that. So Claire can listen.
I think that David Bowie would just play David Bowie,
Yeah.
like rather than like.
But I think that playing David Bowie would totally suit this role.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
it
I
feels
agree.
appropriate. And in some ways,
I
I
think
feel like
that's what
Jared
Jared
Leto's
Leto
kind of
did.
just playing Jared Leto.
Yeah.
Jared Leto played David Bowie, and this is
Yeah.
what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish it would have just been the lead singer of Kiss.
Gene Simmons.
Gene Simmons,
Gene
yeah.
Simmons, yeah.
In
Okay.
makeup.
Yeah, in full Kiss makeup, being super overweight like he is now.
Okay.
Is he fat now?
Let's
I
move
think
on.
so.
I want what do you guys think about Joy, the character, the computer character played by Anna de Armas?
Joy is my favorite part of this movie.
I like her as well. Like,
And this is I'm gonna kind of circle back to something I brought up in Blade Runner, is that Blade Runner to me feels very heartless,
Yeah.
and lifeless in some ways. And I think something that this movie does really well, and it's so interesting, is that it brings so much human heart to a movie about where like almost one or two of the characters in the movie are actually humans, and they're all
Right.
robots, they're all replicants. And I'm so invested in these replicants. I'm so invested in this love story between a robot and this AI online thing. In these replicants, I'm so invested in this love story between a robot and this AI online thing. Her, you know, I love it. And this movie didn't need a love story. Like Joy doesn't need to be in this, but I think it's like so much better that she is in it. And it endears me so much more to Kay. I feel like Joy's a really effective vehicle for like developing the character of me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like crazy to me that I feel like punched in the gut that like essentially it's just a file that gets deleted when Joy quote unquote dies, you know, but it feels like this
Like a true
heart-wrenching
death,
death. Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought Ana de Armas did an excellent job.
I think I disagree with what she brings to this, because the entire time I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, is any of this real? Or is she just, because the whole thing about Joy was hear what you want to hear, see
Sure.
what you want to see.
Yeah.
And like everything where like what she brought, I felt so much pity for Kay.
Mhm.
Because I was like, he's having to take comfort in this thing that is fake.
Yeah.
And entirely fake. And he's like having to believe that it's real. But she is just here to tell him what he wants to hear. And I'm confused if that is what she's doing, but I think that is what she's doing. She's just there to be who he needs her to be.
Well, and to your point, that's maybe one of the most devastating points of the movie is when he passes by the advertisement of
Yeah.
Joy, and she says, "I'm here to say," like that's the ad is, says whatever you need to hear, and she tells him like you look like a good Joe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And like that was the most like in my opinion like the most low I felt in the movie
Because
was
I-
that moment.
And I think that's one of
In the movie
because
was
I-
that moment.
and I think that's one of my favorite I think favorite things about Blade Runner in general, between the both of the movies, where like the first movie we have this kind of like story that's not necessarily this huge thing. And then in this movie we have kind of this expectation that he is the guy, the special one, or whatever. Like that's kind of what we're leading up to. And he's not, you know, and in all of that, I like that. Like, we don't always have to see the story of the most important person in the world.
Right.
Like this is just somebody who's
An
doing what,
average Joe, maybe.
who's doing what he can do and doing what he should do or whatever. And I like that about this series, because I feel like so much you're like, this is the chosen one, this is whatever. And here you're just getting a guy.
Yeah, in both senses, really, Deckard and Kay.
Yeah.
Scott, what do you think of Joy?
Well, hold on. I want to respond to Jake a little bit, because I don't feel like what you said necessarily negates what I said, because I think that is true, and that's a really interesting component of the movie. And something that I read doing a little bit of research on it is that when we see the advertisement of Joy and we have a different voice, that is her like standard product voice, which would imply then that Kay customized her, and that like Denis essentially said that like the standard product that you get when you first, I guess, purchase the Joy is a much more like overtly sexual character, and that Kay wanted like a companion more than just like a lover, you know? And so he customized her. He changed her voice. He really like, you know, made her into what he wants. And I think that even adds an extra layer of like emotional complexity and makes it a little more heartbreaking the more you think about it. But I think the heart is still there. And I'm fooled. It passes the Turing test for me because I'm still bought into who this Joy is. And I want to believe that she truly loves him. And I think that makes the death maybe even a little more of a gut punch, because clearly Kay's affected by this. And it couldn't have, like, maybe it's just nothing there to begin with. And that's like super devastating to think about.
That's what I think. Like, maybe what I object to is your like notion that this is a love story, where like, I don't think that there is a love story here. I think this is like, it's
Sure.
what makes me pity him and feel so much more bad for him.
Technically speaking, like, yes, you're correct. But I think I'm being a little bit more generalizing in that, like, when you're watching a movie and you have two characters who are in love and they're, you know, that's an aspect of the movie. Like, you know, I'm being a little like overly and being a little reductive by saying there's a love story component.
I guess what I was saying is like, he's in love with a fake thing.
Yeah.
And like that, I think that brings a lot to the story, but it doesn't bring like that brings like just like pity and sadness for.
I think you're both right, but I do want to hear from Scott. It's been a long time since we've heard from you about this. What do you think about Joy?
Yeah, I said earlier, I really like her character. It's one of the best things that they added into this universe was this type of being, or not being. And I think she added a lot of complexity to Kay's character that wouldn't have been there. Like, we hear that he's, you know, a replicant, and then he's going through all of his drills and he's like checking in to like make sure that he's still good. And this is something that humanizes him for us as the viewer. And so, and like just adds so much complexity and emotion to it. Like, I think the way we would have seen Kay, it would have been so different if she wasn't in the movie.
Yeah.
And that's,
I agree.
Like, kind of going back to what I was saying, like, it didn't necessarily need to be in the movie. I mean, it's really not in the first movie at all, although it's kind of shoehorned in a little bit. And we didn't talk about the relationship between Deckard and Rachel. It was really weird
because it was uncomfortable
and gross.
And I wanted to avoid it because it made me feel gross.
Really unnatural and inorganic, in my opinion. And this is done in a really like heartbreaking, but like beautiful way. And the scene where she brings in the replicant prostitute is like one of the coolest and like saddest and most beautiful, like most compelling visual scenes I feel like I've ever seen in a film.
I feel like you were disagreeing. Your face, Tyler, showed. I feel like you're disagreeing that the relationship between Deckard and I forget her name.
Yeah, Rachel.
Gross.
I don't think it's gross.
So I don't know if we need to cut this out, but Deckard rapes her in Blade Runner. Where
no,
she's trying to.
I know
leave.
what you're talking about.
He throws her against the wall.
I know what you're talking
and says,
about.
Tell me to kiss you.
I know what you're talking about.
The Wikipedia even says he forces her to do this.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't. Part of this is like I don't want to like speak over something that maybe like the source material specifically says that I didn't read. So I've never read the book. So I don't want to say like that didn't happen if in the book that's how they described it. But I would say emphatically, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think that you're taking a literal approach to the scene when Ridley Scott intended a more loose interpretation of that exchange, to be honest. Like based on his words.
I can see that.
Like Ridley Scott doesn't see it that way at all. The way that you're describing, I understand why you see it that way. That wasn't his intention, and that's not the plot point of the story. So I see why you took it that way wholeheartedly. But at least that wasn't the intention of the film.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was the most confused about in the movie was if I was supposed to think Deckard was a good guy, because I didn't, especially after that scene.
I think that there is something to the reality of the way that we portrayed sex in the 50s through the early 2000s that portrayed sex in a very, like, frankly, even in films, like very pornographic way, in a way that it was very like one natured, because that was all audiences could really like accept, interpret, and process and move on about sex. And I think that like film followed suit with that. And I don't want to necessarily like turn this episode into like a deconstruction of like sex and film, but I think that you're applying 2023 sensibilities to 1982 palette, and that's probably not how audiences read that even at the time.
I don't know about that, but like I know that like even when I read a synopsis of the movie, it was like he forces her into doing this, which is not like cool.
Yeah, I mean, if that's really what they intended, then yeah, but that's not how Ridley Scott, the filmmaker, described it. That's not how like that's not how I read it watching the film. So like, yeah, if that's what they really meant, then you're right. And I think those people that you read their synopsis, they're correct if that's what they intended. I'm saying I don't think that's at all what they intended.
Getting back to Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. That was an interesting exchange. But we could probably spend a lot of time talking about that.
I don't want to like.
I intentionally avoided that in the last discussion because it made me uncomfortable watching the movie.
Yeah, no, but
yeah, and I would have. I get that. I understand why you avoided it. I'm sorry to bring it to make it come back up, but like I definitely didn't read it the way you did.
One aspect of this movie that I thought was really interesting, and it is something that actually is brought up in the first one that we didn't really touch on, is like the prejudice that people have against replicants.
Totally.
And how we have like derogatory terms for them as like, I think it's like skinwalker or
skin job.
Skin job. Yeah, exactly. When we see Ryan Gosling walking through the police department, and someone bumps him and calls him like a skin job or whatever. I thought that was really interesting. I would have even liked that to have been developed even a little bit more. Maybe that would have felt like trying to juggle too much, but that's an aspect of this world that I find really interesting. And in this movie, I thought it was even more interesting that there's kind of like a hierarchy of like species or class a little bit, where we have like humans and then replicants, but then the replicants look down on like Joy. And I thought it was really interesting when like Mackenzie Davis's character tells, or like when the Joy little jingle goes off and Mackenzie Davis tells Ryan Gosling like, oh, you don't like real girls, when Ryan's not real. And Mackenzie Davis is not real either.
Yeah, or are they? You know, like I think that's the big question.
They're not
a lot
human.
of this is like, are they real?
True.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, sure, they're not human, but
like explicitly, they're not human.
Yeah.
But they're more real than Joy is.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though Joy is the most sympathetic character and in a lot of ways feels like the human heart of this story. I just find all that like really interesting.
I don't think she's the human heart.
Really?
Yeah, that was the main thing, by the way. Earlier when I was making frowning faces, I knew where he was going, and that's what I was mainly frowning at.
Okay.
But like my first frown was the Rachel thing, and I was like, I don't know about that. And then you had like launched more into it, and I was like, yeah, I still don't think I agree with this. I think Joy existed for Ryan Gosling to ultimately make a choice over what was worth dying over. And Joy was not worth dying over because she wasn't inherently real. And so he dies to get Harrison Ford to meet his daughter, because in Kay's mind, that is inherently real and worth dying for. Because that's what the woman says. I don't even remember who she was in Blade Runner, but like the leader of the replicant, like she was somebody in the first Blade Runner, but I couldn't place her.
Was she? That was what I was confused in that reveal.
Yeah, she was somebody in the first.
They were
Blade Runner.
looking like I was supposed to know who it was.
Yeah,
Are you sure? Because I don't think she's in Blade Runner, the first one.
She has to be.
Sally Harmson?
No, I don't think that's who he's talking about.
No, that's not who I'm talking.
She's talking about Marsha from Succession.
I haven't watched Succession
because she says like you can't let Deckard lead them to me.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I know who you're talking about. I just
obviously
don't
they
remember
were
her being in the
Freysa.
first one.
Yeah.
Hiem Abbas.
Anyway, I mean it sounded like she was in the original, and they specifically like wrote her into this to give a little bit of like anchor to Deckard. But maybe not. I mean, that's.
I have a question about what you said. Is he definitely dead, Kay? Or Joe, whatever we want to call him?
I think
dead?
he dies on screen. Yeah.
That was what I wasn't sure if he was dead or not.
Yeah, I think he dies on screen.
Well, and to get back to what you're saying about Joy, I think she can be both. Like, I think everything that you
Maybe
said
not.
about her was
Apparently not.
She
wasn't
was
in
not
this.
in
Not in Blade Runner.
in Blade Runner.
Because the way they like introduced her, it was like
looked
we were
like I
supposed
should
to
know who it
know.
was.
Yeah, we were
But
supposed to know who she was.
I was really confused because I had no idea who she was.
Yeah, I just assumed that she had to have been someone from Blade Runner because she acted like we were supposed to know who she was, and she says you can't let them. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
You led them to Deckard. You can't let Deckard lead them to me.
And there was so much where she's like, I helped Deckard do this. We're like, she obviously knew Deckard and was involved in all of that, but I had no idea who she was involved in all of that, but I had no idea who she was.
Totally.
How come?
And my point is that was the line that she tells him is that like to die for something, to die for a worthy cause is the most human thing we can do. That's like the ultimate line of the film.
Yeah, and I think that she can be both. I think everything you said is absolutely correct. But I still also think that Ana de Armas just feels like the most human character, and she's the easiest for me to like latch onto and emotionally invest in. And it's because of her that I can even invest in Kay, because Kay is also very cold and very detached in a lot of ways, similarly to Deckard.
Totally.
And also, honestly, I just like Ana de Armas.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and I think this was pretty early for her in her American film
like
career.
A big breakout for
before
her,
she did
Yes.
Knives Out.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was well before Knives Out. I really think she's Cuban, and I think that Denis had like seen a movie or done a movie with her in Cuba and like really liked her and decided to cast her. So she was a nobody like when she got cast in this. And so was by the way the person who plays the actual real girl. She's not on this list. It doesn't look like that we're looking at.
The
right
memory
now.
maker.
The memory maker.
Oh, the replicant that was born.
Yeah, she was a nobody. Like she had done no U.S. film roles before this. She was like a Swedish. Like she had done a couple of films in Sweden.
Is she in other things? Because I don't think I've seen her in other things.
I don't know if she's gone on, but like Denis like specifically surrounded Ryan with like really competent females who were nobodies before for the most part. You know, like it was like let's just like support him with the best possible female actors. And I think all of them, the four main sort of females in this film did exceptional, especially compared to the first Blade Runner, where all of the female characters felt like throwaways.
Yeah.
How did you guys feel about old man Harrison Ford in this movie?
I liked him.
I liked him.
I have a hard time, and I don't know what it is, but I just have a hard time with old man Harrison Ford. I like young Harrison Ford. I think he's cool. I enjoy watching him, but something about him as the crotchety old man, I just can't get on board with, and I don't know what it is.
I'll say one thing is this movie makes me care so much more about his relationship with Rachel, and kind of makes me care more about both of those characters, to be honest.
I had a weird, like, probably because about what we were talking about earlier, I just such a weird, or just I didn't care about his relationship with Rachel because all of it felt tainted to me.
I feel like I was able to let this movie recontextualize their relationship.
I wasn't.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I guess I didn't feel weird about it in the first place, and watching the extension of it felt exciting to me and really intriguing and interesting and human. But in particular, one of the things I really loved about how they wrote the two stories together is that you have at the beginning and end of each of these films, it's a replicant giving essentially like their last breath is to give to Harrison Ford, is to give to Deckard. I thought that was a really interesting between the two movies, like a synchronicity, like that Beatty dies, like saves Harrison Ford inexplicably and then dies. And then Kay saves Deckard inexplicably and then dies.
Yeah.
You know, like that was a really interesting, like
I hadn't picked up on that, but
like Deckard is definitely the hero of Blade Runner, both movies. Like it's not Kay at all.
Yeah.
Like he's really a foil in some ways to Deckard.
I will say when Harrison Ford is introduced into this film, I really like that. That's one of my like favorite parts of the movie when they're in Vegas. And I love the way that Vegas is designed.
Beautiful.
Especially when they go into like the showroom and we have the holographic Elvis.
Oh yeah.
And
That was
all
a fun
that.
fight.
It's a fun fight and it's so like visually and like audio wise, like so compelling and disorienting and weird and unique. And it's a lot of fun.
I think that was the scene also that kind of led me to the Deckard is a human, where Deckard was just punching Kay, and Kay was just taking it.
Taking it.
And he was just like, I don't want to hurt you.
Right.
I don't want to hurt you. And then I was like, okay, he's definitely not on the same level.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I was sure first movie, but for sure Deckard is human.
Yeah.
Most definitely. I'm sure in first movie, but for sure Deckard is human.
Yeah.
Most definitely after watching. I wasn't sure in first movie, but for sure Deckard is human.
Yeah.
Most definitely after watching 2049.
And
I agree.
I like the story more if he's a human.
I do too.
I think it's better.
Well,
It was Ridley Scott's fault that he might have been a replicant. It was just Ridley Scott is a bad
It's
filmmaker.
all
I think
Ridley
it was-
Scott's fault.
It's Ridley Scott's fault.
Like not knowing that
And by
40
that,
years,
we mean it's Scott Schuete's fault.
Yeah.
Right.
not knowing that 40 years later there was going to be this sequel made. I think that's a very interesting thing to explore in Blade Runner.
Mhm.
But I do agree that taking these two movies together is much more interesting if he is a human.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think it was a bad idea
No.
to raise the question
No.
in Blade Runner because
I agree.
Blade Runner was Blade Runner.
Yeah,
You know,
I
I
agree.
think there was little things though in that movie, like even in the end when he does the jump and he can't jump that
Mhm.
far,
Right.
And then Beatty easily
does it. Yeah.
Like I think there's things that indicate
I
he's
agree.
human.
But there are also things that indicate that he might not be in the first one. That's what left most of the audience pretty split, you know. But no, I agree, Jake. I think that it wasn't the wrong decision to explore that idea. I agree. I was mostly teasing.
Scott, what do you think of old man Harrison Ford?
I don't know. He kind of feels like he doesn't know what's going on and he's just saying the things he's supposed to say.
that's how I feel about every old man. Like that's a good way to say it. That's how I feel about everything he does as an old man.
Yeah,
Star Wars
honestly,
too?
Yeah. Oh,
It
he was
reminds me
awful in
of,
Star Wars.
Although I think this person executed better. Liam Neeson for Star Wars when he was Qui-Gon Jinn.
Okay.
He was in an interview where he said, like, yeah, I know nothing about Star Wars. Like I was saying stuff. I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know if I'm saying it right.
But
Like,
And I don't know
I'm
why.
just saying stuff.
Like
Harrison
I
Ford
heard.
has like a respect for this though.
Yeah,
More than he
actually
does Star
really,
Wars.
like he didn't want to do Star Wars. He was actively excited about this project.
Yeah, I mean, he got his own cut of the first one. So
I don't know why. Speaking of Liam Neeson in Star Wars, I don't know why Liam Neeson. I heard him on Conan's podcast talking about how he was pretty confused about what was going on in Star Wars, and that endeared me to him so much. But then talking because I maybe the difference is that Harrison Ford just hated it, and it was what made him who he is. That I just hate listening to how much Harrison Ford hates Star Wars.
I think it's
I wanna
because Harrison
change the
Ford's like a
subject.
jerk a little bit in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have kind of a funny anecdote. When there was discussions about the sequel to this movie or to Blade Runner, this movie, Harrison Ford came to the producers and was like, "Hey, like, this Ryan Gosling guy, he's a pretty good actor. You should maybe consider him for the main character. And they're like, yeah, we know. Like we've already reached out to him. Like he's clearly the best person for the job.
Love that Harrison Ford tried to discover Ryan Gosling.
No, Harrison Ford said exactly that. I watched him say it in an interview. Exactly that.
Yeah, I think he was watched the same.
He was like, I went to them and I was like, oh, you got to get this guy Ryan Gosling, and they were like, yeah, dude, we know. Like that's how Harrison characterized it. Like
Harrison Ford was like, this guy Ryan Gosling, he's literally me.
But it was
he's a young me.
He's a young me. It was Denny in particular. Denny went to Scott and he was like, hey man, I'm really thinking Ryan Gosling for this. And according to Ridley Scott said that was when I knew that this was the right pair, because like that's who I saw for this as well. Like, so Scott, who is super like Scott was the executive producer of it. He gave the project to Denny. Like he wanted to see this through and like made it happen with Francher, the writer, the original writer for Bladerunner, and they like figured it all out. And Scott was like, I think Ryan Gosling's the guy. And then Denny told him that, and he was like, yep. And then they went to Harrison, and Harrison was like, I really think you guys should get this guy. I don't know if you've heard of him before, Ryan Gosling. And they were like, yeah, we're on it. Like,
what did you guys think of the Ana de Armas Mackenzie Davis scene with Ryan Gosling?
I thought that it was an interesting scene.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that it was an interesting idea that she would want to do that. I found it uncomfortable, but okay. I don't know. I don't know that was against what was wanted for that. Like, cause like, it's like, she's like bringing somebody else in to be the shell,
like
the physical shell for her.
Yeah.
Right.
Artificial, like,
intentionally intimate and awkward. And
where it's like
intentionally intimate and awkward. And
where it's like this very intimate moment between them that she has to bring somebody else in to just kind of like be like, and it was like even like where like they weren't totally in sync, and their hands were out of sync, and their faces were out of sync in a way that just made it feel so weird, because it is weird.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was a bad scene. I think it was a good scene, but it did make me feel weird.
I think that's like when really joy passes the Turing test for me, and really makes me question, like, does she actually have genuine love for Kay? Because everything prior to that does feel like it could have just been like very easily programmed to like what Kay would want. But in that moment, and I think it's Ana de Armas, I think it's her acting, there's pain. Like you can see pain in her face during that scene, like wishing so badly that she could provide what she can't, that she has to bring Mackenzie Davis in to do. And there's pain on Ryan Gosling's face in that moment as well. And it like confliction, and it's like so heartbreaking, and it's such a beautiful scene
where it kind of feels like they both want to do it for each other, and neither of them necessarily wants to do it.
Yeah. Like it's such a complex scene.
Yeah.
Like so emotionally complex. That I love it. I mean, it is uncomfortable. It's a lot.
It's interesting. Like in the first movie, like, you know, you have Rachel, and like there's like the biblical like like where he connects
they
it.
Allude that.
And then
that made me wonder if that was like, how was that just a coincidence?
Yeah. And then here it kind of reminds me once again of like the Rachel Bible story, where like Rachel can't provide something for her husband, so then she brings in a concubine to like provide that thing for him, and then she's kind of like mad at that person then afterwards, which was kind of Ana de Armas's reaction. Like after the whole thing was done, the next morning she's like, we're done with you, you can go.
It's so funny. I actually don't think that I agree at all. I think that
With
Joy's, I guess both you guys, I think that Joy's existence, to be honest, is super derivative to me. Like it's not interesting or like new. And I also don't think that it's like I think that it's important, like device to expose us to Kay's motivations, but I don't think that like she is truly like a character in and of herself. I mean, obviously she's a character, but like I don't think that she's like the purpose of writing her into it. I don't think that it doesn't rise to me to the same like threshold kind of that you're talking about. To me, she's Tinkerbell.
That's interesting.
For you, she's not anything more than a computer program.
Well, yeah, she's a vehicle for us to be able to understand Kay, but not an inherent character that we're supposed to necessarily attach to or learn anything about. She's important to like advance certain elements of character exposition and plot, not necessarily like a central point of the story that we're supposed to lean onto. Jake,
I think
you
I
seem to like
no,
resonate with what I
think I
said.
agree. I think I agree with what you said 100%, that she exists to give us an insight into Kay and like understand his character. But at the same time, and maybe because this is literally me, I did attach to her.
Yeah, I don't understand why
Like-
she can't be both.
Like, I think she is both, but I understand what you're saying. We're like she exists to show us Kay, but almost for me, put me in Kay's shoes where I do get attached somehow. Like I guess I think I agree with what you're saying. I don't know why she can't be both, but that's an interesting, like she's Tinkerbell. I
Like
think that's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I still do get attached to her, like Kay does.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I like Tinkerbell. I think Tinkerbell, if Tinkerbell doesn't have any personality, then like, yeah, she doesn't achieve her function to reveal Peter and Wendy to us.
Uh-huh.
But I think that Joy existed to reveal Kay to us, and I think to reveal to Kay how important real connection is. It is something. Real connection is something worth dying over, even if it's not his own. Just like Beatty died to save Deckard's life, because life is worth saving, even if it can't be his own. And so, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that Joy is brilliantly written, but I don't think that she's brilliantly written as a character. I think she's brilliantly written as a device.
Yeah, I just don't really see how that's like in disagreement with what I'm saying.
Is just not a human character by any means. Like, she doesn't feel or read human. She's a device.
She doesn't feel human to you at all. So like Ana de Armas in that scene in her acting doesn't feel human.
No, her acting is incredible. Don't get me wrong. Her acting, she's acting the role that she has been written, but the role that she has been written is not to be like this human anchor. It's to be Tinkerbell. It's to be a device
real
for us
human emotion.
Yeah, and I think it's really great acting. I'm not disagreeing that it's good acting.
I think she's Kay's anchor, right? Like she's Kay's anchor.
It's like saying the scene of like hiding the toy horse is like the most impactful thing Kay does. Well, Kay doesn't even do it.
I don't see how that's the same at all, to be honest.
Because it's just not what the writing reveals that what you're describing is not
maybe what I'm trying to say
they wrote.
I think the most human aspect of this movie is the heartbreak that Kay feels, and that's all because of Joy, and their relationship is like the human heart of the story.
I disagree. I think the human heart of the story is Kay's death, not Joy's death.
Also,
I mean, I think they're kind of like related because it is all Kay's story, really.
I don't think it is. I think it's all Deckard's story.
Okay, but Deckard's barely in the movie.
I know, but all of it is still like the ending reveals that all of this has been Deckard's story. It's not Kay's story.
Okay.
I think because Deckard's the one who lives doesn't mean it's his story.
I think in light of the first movie, that's what I'm saying. I'm tying them together, and I'm saying that all of them together, including 2049, are Deckard's story. And we only find out that 2049 is Deckard's story in the last like little bit, and especially in the last scene of the movie, we find out that this is all Deckard's story.
Because like everything Kay does, I guess, in the end is to serve
in service of Deckard. It's the exact same thing as Beatty's end.
I feel like
so just like Jake, you said Beatty is not, he's the antagonist, but he's not the villain of the movie. I think that Kay is the antagonist of the movie, not the protagonist.
You think Kay's the antagonist?
Yeah.
I don't understand at all.
Get on board with that.
That Kay, how is Kay the antagonist?
Well, I guess I shouldn't say the antagonist.
I think Kay is the protagonist.
I guess what I'm saying is he's like, I guess, no, I misspoke. What I'm trying to say is, just like you said in Blade Runner, we find out at the end that the replicants are the antagonist, but not the villain. I think we find out at the end of this movie that Kay is not the protagonist.
I feel like if Joy didn't feel like a genuine, like, human character, and I'm not trying to prove that she's human. She's clearly not. And for all we know, she's completely programmed to be whatever Kay wants her to be. But if
I think that's what we find out. I think that's what the movie actually reveals to us, is my point.
Yeah, no, I know. And I haven't been in disagreement with that at all. But what I'm saying is, she feels human to us as the audience member. And if she didn't, her death would be meaningless.
I agree. And that's what makes it a good
device.
That's why I don't feel like we're saying personal character.
That's why I don't understand
character in the story. It's not human.
I think I understand. I think
the whole point is to show us how inhuman she is.
I
haven't said she's not.
I think I understand your disagreement here. So I think, Zach, you here are approaching this with Kay as the protagonist, the hero of this story. And so because Joy is real and is anchoring to Kay, that I think is what you're saying. But Tyler is saying that Kay is not the hero, not the protagonist of this story. And I think this is where your disagreement is. I'm not positive. Where like it's Deckard's story. And so Tyler, Joy is showing us the...
And yes, exactly what you're saying to me, exactly what you're saying. And to me, like, the reason why I compared her to Tinkerbell, I do think it's a fairly astute comparison. Like, compared to, like, we find out at the end of Peter Pan that Peter Pan is not the protagonist of Peter Pan. Wendy is the protagonist of Peter Pan. Like, we find that out only at the end, that like Peter is not even like it's a misdirect in storytelling. And I think that all of Kay is a misdirect in storytelling. I think that Joy is a device to expose us to Kay's longing for connection, and that's it. And she does it beautifully. I think the writing is great. I think the acting is phenomenal. But like, after she's gone, it's a devastating blow. But after she's gone, we immediately forget about her importance or existence, because none of it matters, because at the same time we find out that Kay doesn't matter. Like, minutes after finding out that Joy can be eradicated without a thought, we find out that Kay does not matter at all, that he is a cog in this story. And the real protagonist this whole time has been Deckard. And, I guess my point is, I agree with you. I think Anna de Armas does a great job. I just don't think she's written by any stretch of the imagination for me to be a very human and feeling character. She exists to make us realize how lonely Kay is.
I think,
and that's it.
I think that Kay,
I feel like that.
A lot.
I feel like that implies then that Denis did something incredibly effective, in my opinion, on accident, which doesn't feel like that's what
I think it's on purpose. That's what I'm saying.
So then I have no idea like how we're disagreeing then.
I think
because I know she's not human, and I think what's really interesting is the humans in this story are the most cold, and we're the most detached from them, and then we get diluted down to the replicants, and we sympathize with them. We sympathize with Dave Bautista. We sympathize with the Resistance. We obviously sympathize with Kay, and then we even dilute that down a little bit more to Joy, and Joy feels like the most selfless, the most especially in that scene, I'm seeing real human pain, and I know it's not real. Like in the story, I know it's completely programmed. It's she's AI, but it feels like for me as the audience member, that's the scene where I'm feeling the most human emotion, And that's all I'm really saying is like, it's drawing out of me the most human emotion. So that's where I feel like I'm experiencing the most like heart in the story, but I'm not like necessarily saying in like in a literal sense that she is like the human, because she's clearly like not a human character.
And she's not the heart of the story.
I mean, I guess in a literal sense.
That's what I'm fighting against is you were like, she's the heart of the story. And I'm like, no, she's really not. She's not even a main character.
Then I think
she's a plot device.
I think you said something. Sorry.
I think maybe then I shouldn't have said it that way. What I meant by that was the relationship between Kay and Joy feels like the heart of the movie.
And that's what I'm saying is I completely disagree.
Okay, we can disagree.
Yeah. But that's the heart of the argument. Like we got back to the beginning of the argument.
I mean, I feel like that's
everything I've said was to disagree with
it's so much more present throughout the movie. But yeah, then I guess at the very end that's kind of what we're leading to. But I feel like they're all one and the same. Like it's all like connected. And so I feel like it can kind of be all of it. It doesn't have to be so like black and white.
I guess. Yeah.
I think also you said something I disagree with pretty hard was that Kay doesn't matter. Kay, we're like, even though Kay's story is to serve Deckard, ultimately, we're watching Kay's story. We're not watching in this movie. We're not watching Deckard's story.
Sure.
We're watching Kay's story. And so to the movie that we're watching, to the story we're watching, Kay matters. And to the overall meta story, I would say Kay matters in that he brings Deckard to his child. And whatever the implications of that are for the future, Kay was instrumental in bringing that about. That wouldn't have happened without Kay. So I think Kay is important in the meta story, but also in this movie, I think he's incredibly important.
And I agree with you completely in the sense that like he is as important. That was going back to that. I misspoke earlier. I kind of drew a connection in my head that like I thought I could jump to and I was wrong. But this is what I was trying to say. Kay is as important, in my opinion, to Blade Runner, to the two of them, as Beatty is. But only think that, like, don't get me wrong, like, I love this movie. I think it's really great. I really love Ryan Gosling. I think, like, I love it. Like, but like, the reality is we get to the end of the story and we realize that this is just a continuum of Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Like, Denis has, like, artfully created a recursive moment where we are circling back to everything about Blade Runner, and we realize that everything that we just watched was totally within the heart and spirit of the first film. And we don't really fully realize that until the end. And in that same moment, we realize that none of this was even about Kay, just like none of this was about Beatty. It was all about Deckard and Rachel. And again, it's all about Deckard and not Rachel, because Rachel died in childbirth, but the daughter that Rachel gave him that he's been estranged from this whole time. Like it reveals to us, just like Blade Runner did, that everything that we've been looking at, it's a misdirect. Like, yeah, we've been talking about all this, but really what matters is this. And they do the same thing in this. And it is to, like, the function of the story is to, I guess, like, ultimately, like, put certain characters in their place, so to speak, and this happens again and again and now again in this film. And we've gone super over. I've been
I was about to say,
I'm sorry.
I think,
and I feel like we're all kind of in agreement. Like, I feel like other than the idea that like the heart of the movie can't be this because it must be this, like, I've agreed with everything you've said. Like, I think it's a really good analysis, and you're right. This is Deckard's story, and at the ending tells us that.
I think here's I'm gonna just completely take us off this track to get us to the end. A little silly observation I made. So this movie, right? They leave LA, they go towards San Diego, and they end up in a literal dump. I think that's Riverside.
No, it's got it. Yeah,
they're going towards, like, I think that there's a real
Vegas.
The dump is in San Diego.
It's a San Diego, like, leaving LA metro area. It's a San Diego sector.
Yeah,
but I don't know where that lands.
You think it's
I think
it's Moreno Valley.
It could be Moreno Valley. I think it's Riverside County.
Somewhere in the IE.
I think it's somewhere in the Inland Empire. Like,
Yeah.
there's a chance that this is where the horse was hidden, where we're sitting right now.
No,
And I love that.
I will say for sure, Ridley Scott and Denis have very sad outlooks on LA, San Diego, and Vegas.
So like, but that's I love that this might be where the furnace gets built. That the horse gets hidden.
We're right here.
An observation that I had too, as much as it's just a meme that like Ryan Gosling is the dude that like nerdy guys think is literally them. This is a story about how Ryan Gosling gets like really sad when his AI girlfriend gets deleted.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something to that.
We have, as much as you love this movie, we have very, very different takes on this movie. What do you guys say we put this one in the books?
I don't think Scott said anything for the last half hour of that episode.
Scott didn't say anything for most of both of these episodes.
There was enough conversation. I didn't need.
But we like when you chime in.
I tried several times to like punt us to Scott, but
Yeah, but it's
I
like
responded, and then there was arguments that went around.
But join in the arguments. We like you, and we like when you talk.
You know that sometimes though you guys get in conversations where like I just don't have as strong of an opinion or like really like
that's what Scott's doing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
because honestly, for me, like you guys are arguing about something that I'm like, think you guys are arguing about different things. It's similar to when you and Will used to argue.
I think I agree.
And you guys were arguing about different things, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna let them do their thing, and then we're gonna end the episode.
I think I agree too. I think we were arguing about different things. I just kept getting told we were saying the same thing.
I was trying to figure out where the disparity in the argument was. I think I agree though that you guys were not like that. And I guess I was. Me and Zach and you were arguing about different things, but I couldn't figure out where the disconnect was, and I was trying very hard.
Well, on that alarm, let's put this one in the books. Jake needs to do PT, so
I do need to do physical therapy.
Zach, you're up first.
I'm going to give this movie 9.7 horses hidden in Riverside.
Wow. I think I'm going to be the lowest, so I'm going to go next. Horses that are wooden in a furnace that aren't in Riverside.
But maybe in Moreno Valley?
Maybe. Jake.
I'll go ahead and give this 8.4 movies about me.
Heather?
not you are the lowest, but not by a lot. 8.3 androids who dream of electric sheep. And there it is.
This comes out to an 87%. Once again, Rotten Tomatoes gave it an 88 and IMDb gave it an 8. So we're right in between the two of them. This comes out to movie number 24 out of 156.
Nice. Where are we going next week, Scott?
Next week, we're going to figure out the fate.
The fate.
Can I tell you something? I keep forgetting that it's called...
Dude, I think this episode is just going to be effed up.
All right.
All right, Patreon. We went long, so we're going to end it early.
We love you.
What's your favorite Fast movie? Tell us in the comments.
We're not going to be able to end this live stream because YouTube is not loading. Just reload the page, Scott.
Is that going to ruin?
Oh, there you go. It won't ruin anything, but
end stream. End.